The breaking point, the crystal chamber of the Galactic Council, stretched endlessly in all directions, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that had witnessed the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations. Ambassador Marcus Chen stood, alone in the center. His simple black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and exotic forms surrounding him. The weight of 40 billion human souls across 200 colonies pressed down on his shoulders as he faced the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. Council. Leader Vexther towered above the assembly, his crystalline body refracting the chamber's light into prismatic rainbows. When he spoke, his voice resonated through quantum frequencies that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the mind. Human Ambassador Chen, you have been summoned to receive our final judgment. Marcus kept his expression neutral, though his heart hammered against his ribs. 3 years of negotiations had led to this moment. 3 years of humanity trying to prove they deserved a place among the galactic community. 3 years of being treated like unruly children who refused to learn proper manners. The Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision regarding the human problem. Vexther continued, his mental voice carrying the authority of beings who had ruled space for millions of years. Your species has proven itself incapable of civilized coexistence. Your expansion is chaotic. Your military buildup threatens established order. Your stubborn independence disrupts galactic harmony. Behind Vexther, the representatives of 800 alien civilizations nodded in agreement. The Zephyrians, with their flowing tentacle faces, the mechanical constructors, whose bodies were living metal, the ancient ethereals, who existed as pure energy contained in geometric force fields, all of them staring down at the lone human with expressions ranging from pity to disgust. Military Commander Zolthak stepped forward, his 6 arms ending in razor-sharp claws that had conquered 100 worlds. His species, the Devourers, were the Council's enforcers, bred for war across millennia of genetic manipulation. The Council offers humanity 3 final conditions for continued existence. He growled through mechanical translators. Submit, completely, or face total extinction. Marcus felt sweat bead on his forehead despite the chamber's controlled temperature. State your conditions. First, Vexter's voice thundered. Humanity will immediately surrender all military vessels and weapons to Council forces. Your species has shown it cannot be trusted with instruments of war. The words hit Marcus like physical blows. Humanity's fleet was tiny compared to the Council's might. But those ships were all that stood between human colonies and the hostile unknowns of deep space. Pirates, rogue AI constructs, and worse things lurked in the darkness between stars. Second, Zolthak continued, every human world will accept Council-appointed governors who will oversee all major decisions. Your democratic systems have proven too chaotic for galactic stability. Marcus clenched his fists behind his back. The idea of alien overlords ruling human worlds, making decisions about human lives, went against everything his species had fought. For since crawling out of caves on Earth, third, Vexter concluded, humanity will provide tribute to the Council equivalent to 90% of all resources extracted from your territories. This will ensure proper redistribution according to galactic needs. The chamber fell silent except for the humming of energy fields and the subtle sounds of alien life support systems. Marcus stared up at the assembled Council, seeing in their alien features the same arrogance that had driven tyrants throughout human history. They offered slavery disguised as civilization, chains wrapped in the promise of peace. You have one solar day to provide your answer, Zolthak said. Refuse these generous terms, and our war fleets will reduce every human world to radioactive ash. 40 billion lives rest on your decision, Ambassador. Marcus bowed slightly, buying himself precious seconds to think. Through the quantum communicator embedded in his skull, he could feel the desperate messages flooding in from Earth. President Sarah Kim and the Global Defense Council were waiting for his report. Scientists were running calculations on humanity's chances in an all-out war. Military leaders were preparing for what might be the final battle of human history. The math was simple and terrifying. The Galactic Council commanded millions of ships, weapons that could crack planets, and technology that made human science look like stone tools. Humanity had barely 3,000 military vessels, most of them cobbled together from mining equipment and merchant hulls. In a straight fight, the human species would be extinct within a week. But as Marcus looked up at the alien faces surrounding him, he remembered why humanity had reached for the stars in the first place. Not for safety or comfort, but for the freedom to choose their own destiny among the infinite possibilities of space. Every human colony had been built by people who refused to accept limitations, who looked at impossible odds and said, "Watch us anyway." "I understand the Council's position," Marcus said finally, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "However, I must respectfully decline these terms on behalf of all humanity." A ripple of shock ran through the assembly. In 10,000 years of Council history, no species had ever rejected an ultimatum this clear. They offered survival in exchange for submission, and survival always won. Vextha's crystalline form blazed brighter, casting harsh shadows across the chamber walls. "You would choose extinction over wisdom. Your pride will kill every human." "In the galaxy, not pride," Marcus replied, surprising himself with the steadiness of his own voice. "Principle. Humanity would rather die free than live as slaves. We've made that choice before, and will make it again." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, translated into a babel of threats, warnings, and expressions of disbelief. Through it all, Marcus stood perfectly still, knowing that his next words would echo through history, regardless of how short that history might be. "Tell your fleets to come," he said to Zolthek, looking directly into the commander's predatory eyes. "Tell them to bring everything they have, because if you want to end humanity, you're going to have to kill every last one of us. And we're going to make it cost you more than you ever imagined." Marcus turned and walked toward the chamber's exit, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Behind him, 800 alien civilizations watched in amazement as a single human chose certain death over comfortable slavery as the massive doors sealed behind him. Marcus activated his quantum communicator. "Command, this is Ambassador Chen. The negotiations have concluded. Prepare for war." Back on Earth, President Sarah Kim received the message in the war room buried beneath the Himalayas. Around the reinforced table sat the leaders of humanity's greatest minds: Admiral Rebecca Torres of the Space Defense Force, Dr. James Liu from the Advanced Weapons Division, and Director Maria Santos of Colonial Coordination. "How long do we have?" President Kim asked, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. "Intelligence suggests the Council will mobilize their enforcement fleets within 72 hours. Admiral Torres reported, her scarred face grim with the weight of command. "Conservative estimates put their force at 10,000 ships, including Planet." As Dr. Liu leaned forward, his fingers drumming nervously on the table's surface. "Our theoretical weapons might give us some tactical advantages, But we're talking about 1,000-to-1 numerical disadvantage. The physics just don't work in our favor. Then we change the physics, President Kim said quietly. Maria, how quickly can we evacuate non-essential personnel from the outer colonies? Director Santos shook her head. Even with every available transport, we couldn't move more than 10% of the population. Most of our people are going to have to stand and fight wherever they are. The room fell silent as the reality sank in. 40 billion humans scattered across 200 worlds, about to face the combined might of galactic civilization with nothing but determination and improvised weapons. Asterisk. President Kim stood and walked to the massive display showing the positions of human colonies throughout local space. Each light represented millions of lives. Families who had traveled unimaginable distances to build new homes among the stars. Now all of them faced extinction because humanity had refused to kneel. Send word to every colony, every ship, every human settlement from here to the rim, she ordered. Tell them what's coming. Tell them why we chose this path. And tell them that if this is humanity's last stand, we're going to make it one the galaxy will never forget. As alarms began sounding throughout human space, calling civilians to shelters and military personnel to battle stations, a strange phenomenon occurred. Instead of panic or despair, a fierce determination spread through human colonies like wildfire. Workers welded armor plating onto civilian ships. Miners converted extraction charges into improvised torpedoes. Scientists shared theoretical weapon designs across quantum networks with reckless disregard for security protocols. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, given an impossible choice between freedom and survival. They had chosen freedom, and now they prepared to pay the price with a courage that would either save them or serve as their final testament to the stars. In the depths of space, the Galactic Council's war machine began to move. 10,000 ships, of unimaginable power, crewed by species that had never known defeat, began their journey toward human space. They expected to find a broken civilization begging for mercy. Instead, they would find something the galaxy had never seen before, an entire species willing to die rather than surrender their right to choose their own fate. The collision between galactic order and human determination was about to reshape the very foundations of interstellar civilization. The war that would determine humanity's fate had begun, and both sides believed they knew how it would end. Asterisk. The unexpected turn 3 days after Ambassador Chun's defiant rejection. The Galactic Council's enforcement fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. 10,000 ships materialized in perfect formation, their combined mass creating gravitational anomalies that disturbed the orbits of distant asteroids. At the fleet's heart hung the Annihilator, Zolthek's flagship, a 20-kilometer behemoth whose weapons could boil oceans and crack continents. Commander Zolthek stood on his bridge, 6 arms spread wide as tactical displays showed him the pathetic human defenses. 3,000 ships, mostly converted cargo haulers and mining vessels, formed ragged defensive lines around Earth and Mars. The largest human vessel was barely a kilometer long. The disparity was so extreme it almost felt like murder rather than war. Scan for their planetary defense systems. Zolthek ordered his tactical officer, a spider-like being whose compound eyes processed data at quantum speeds. Detecting minimal ground-based installations, came the reply. No orbital platforms of significant threat level. Their defensive doctrine appears to rely entirely on mobile units. Zolthek's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. 10,000 years of warfare had taught the Devourers to respect any opponent, but this was beyond asymmetrical. This was extinction delayed by mere hours. "Open a channel to the human fleet," he commanded. On the bridge of the Earth defense ship Defiance, Admiral Rebecca Torres received the incoming transmission. Her scarred face showed no emotion as Zoltek's predatory features filled her main screen. "Human Admiral," the alien commander spoke through mechanical translators. "I offer you one final chance to spare your species unnecessary suffering. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths swift." Torres leaned back in her command chair, studying the tactical display that showed her pathetically small fleet facing odds that belonged in nightmares rather than military analysis. Around her, the bridge crew maintained their positions with the calm professionalism of people who had already accepted their fate. "Commander Zoltek," she replied evenly, "humanity has never surrendered to anyone or anything, and we're not about to start with you. Come and take us if you can." The alien's eyes blazed with predatory fury. "So be it. All ships advance. Show them the price of defying the galactic order." The Council fleet began its final approach, weapons charging, with energy signatures that registered on human sensors like miniature stars being born. Earth's defense satellites, puny compared to the approaching armada, swiveled to track the incoming threats while knowing their efforts were futile. On Earth's surface, 40 billion humans watched the skies through emergency broadcasts, seeing the distant lights of approaching ships that carried their doom. In underground shelters, children clutched toys while parents whispered reassurances they didn't believe. In orbital stations, workers continued their duties with quiet dignity, determined to meet the end on their feet. The first exchange of fire lit up space like a violent aurora. Human missiles, jury-rigged with every enhancement desperate engineers could devise, streaked toward Council ships, while return volleys of plasma and antimatter turned human vessels into expanding clouds of debris. Within minutes, the human fleet had lost 200 ships while barely scratching the alien formation's shields. But something strange began happening on the Council ship's sensor arrays. Deep space monitoring stations were detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the direction of the galactic core, moving at speeds that defied known physics. Whatever was coming traveled faster than anything in the Council's databases, leaving trails of exotic particles that distorted spacetime itself. Commander Zelthek's sensor operator reported, its voice tinged with confusion. "We're detecting incoming objects. Multiple contacts, origin unknown. Estimated arrival in 30 minutes. Zelthek barely glanced at the readings, focused on the human fleet's desperate last stand. Probably human reinforcements from their outer colonies. It won't matter. Continue. The attack. But on Earth's most sophisticated astronomical observatories, human scientists were seeing something that made them question their own instruments. The approaching objects weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were structures the size of moons, geometric forms that seemed to bend light around them in ways that violated basic physics. And they were old, older than human civilization, older than the Galactic Council, older than most of the stars in local space. Dr. James Liu burst into Earth's command center, his usually calm demeanor shattered by excitement and terror. "President Kim, you need to see this. The objects approaching our system aren't human or Council. The quantum signatures suggest they're millions of years old." President Kim studied the data streaming across her displays, watching as the mysterious objects decelerated from impossible speeds to match the solar system's orbital mechanics. Could they be automated systems, ancient weapons? Unknown, but they're responding to our communications attempts. Someone or something is alive on those ships. Asterisk, as the battle raged in Earth's outer system, with human defenders selling their lives too by precious minutes, the ancient vessels finally revealed themselves. 5 moon-sized structures materialized fully into normal space, their surfaces covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. These were not ships, but cities. Habitats that had traveled between galaxies when the universe was young. From the largest structure came a transmission that bypassed all known communication protocols, speaking directly into the minds of every intelligent being in the solar system. The voice was ancient beyond measure, carrying the weight of eons and the wisdom of beings who had watched the birth of stars. Cease your hostilities. This system is under the protection of the predecessors. Zolthek S. Fleet stopped firing, not from choice, but because their weapons simply would not function. Every energy system, every missile launcher, every tool of war had been disabled by fields that operated on principles beyond Council science. On his bridge, Zolthek stared at the impossible structures that dwarfed his mighty fleet like insects. Next to mountains. What are you? He whispered. The ancient voice replied, tinged with sadness that had accumulated across geological ages. We are what remains of those who came before. We seeded this galaxy with life when your homeworlds were still cooling rock. We have watched in hiding as our children grew and spread among the stars. Vexter's crystal form blazed with desperate authority as he opened communications from the Council's command ship. I am Council Leader Vexter. By what right do you interfere in galactic law? By the right of creators observing their creation, came the reply, and by the right of judges, witnessing a trial that has lasted for millennia. The space around Earth filled with additional predecessor vessels, each one a testament to technologies that made Council science seem primitive. They had been hidden throughout the galaxy, watching and waiting as younger civilizations rose and fell. For 10 million years, we have observed the species that arose from our genetic templates. The predecessor voice continued. We watched to see which of our children would inherit the galaxy when we finally departed. The trial is complete. Admiral Torres, her fleet, saved from destruction by incomprehensible intervention, found her voice. What trial? The test of character. When faced with impossible odds, we created the Galactic Council to see if power would breed wisdom or tyranny. We scattered younger species like humanity to see if freedom would inspire courage or chaos. Today, we have our answer. The ancient beings showed no mercy in their judgment. The Council has used its power to crush independence and enforce conformity. When faced with defiance, you chose extinction over negotiation. When offered the chance to learn from a younger species, you responded with violence. Zolthek's mandibles clicked in desperate protest. These humans are primitive, chaotic. They threaten galactic order. They threaten your order, came the cold reply. An order built on submission rather than cooperation. An order that mistakes uniformity for peace. The predecessor ships began to move with purpose that transcended mere technology. Space itself seemed to bend around them as they took positions throughout the solar system. Humanity has shown the courage to choose death over slavery, to fight impossible odds for principle rather than survival. They have earned the right to inherit what the Council has proven unworthy to possess. What happened next would be remembered as the moment the galaxy's power structure inverted completely. Predecessor technology began flowing to human colonies, uploading directly into willing minds that could grasp concepts the Council had never imagined. weapons that could reshape matter at the quantum level, shields that drew power from parallel dimensions, engines that made interstellar travel as simple as walking across a room. No. Vexter's mental scream echoed across subspace frequencies. We have ruled for millions of years. We are the galactic civilization. You were our disappointment, the predecessor voice replied with infinite sadness. You had everything needed to bring peace and prosperity to the galaxy. Instead, you brought stagnation and tyranny. Your time is ended. The Council fleet found itself teleported beyond the galaxy's edge. Their weapons and warships reduced to basic materials by forces they could not comprehend. They were not destroyed, but they were exiled, forced to rebuild their civilizations without the technology they had used to dominate others. As predecessor vessels prepared to depart for destinations beyond known space, their ancient voice addressed humanity one final time. The galaxy is yours now, children of Earth. Use the power we leave behind more wisely than those who came before. Create the harmony they could not achieve. President Kim, overwhelmed by the enormity of what had transpired, managed to form a question. How do we know we won't make the same mistakes? Because when faced with the ultimate test, you chose to die free rather than live as slaves. That courage, that commitment to principle over survival, is what the galaxy needs. Build well, humanity. The universe is watching. The predecessor ships faded from normal space, leaving behind only the quantum echoes of their passage and the transformed reality they had created. Humanity, which had faced extinction only hours before, now found itself the inheritor of galactic civilization in the aftermath. As human colonies across space began to comprehend their new reality, one truth became clear. The species that had refused to bow, that had chosen death over surrender, had won not just survival but the right to reshape the galaxy according to human values of freedom, courage, and determination. The Galactic Council had wanted humanity gone. Instead, they had revealed themselves unworthy of the power they wielded. While humanity had proven worthy of far more than they had ever imagined possible, the age of human dominance among the stars had begun, forged in the crucible of impossible odds and tempered by the courage to say no when surrender would have been easier. And across the galaxy, the message spread that freedom was not just a human concept, but a universal right worth fighting for, no matter the odds. Asterisk.